Alright guys, welcome back to another 117 Industries video. Now, today's video is going to be a little bit of a weird one because we can't necessarily pull it directly from the source. We're going to just be talking about it, mostly because everyone else who watched the video and reacted to it live got it taken down. And of course, I'm talking about, if you're in the Halo community at all, the Halo Infinite The Promise by Dan Choice. I don't know the exact last name. It's a YouTube video essentially about, the beginnings of Halo Infinite and like the in-between stage between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite and what they were doing behind the scenes for the production and just the creation in general of that game. We're going to have the video linked down in the description. It's the official YouTube channel that it's on is called Predictors. So we're going to talk about it in length. We might be able to show like clips of it here and there. We'll see. We're going to play with it. But for the most part, it's just going to be us talking and sharing, of course, with Halo videos and pictures kind of covering as well. So again, this whole concept of this video was like, and I think it was supposed to be internal. I'm not 100% sure. It seems like it might have been internal or to like investors or like, I don't know, maybe just for the community of who were invested in the creation and the production of this game. But it kind of starts from the beginning, right? The first part it opens up is, what is your opinion of the state of Halo, right? And this is like right after Halo 5 Guardians. So, and obviously that was kind of a weird time for a lot of fans because it was improvement, but also a step backwards, right? A lot of fans had a hard time with Halo 4 and the gameplay, right? And the gameplay decisions and the multiplayer decisions. And it seems like Halo 5 Guardians made a really great step forward in that area. The gameplay seemed a lot better. The sandbox, the gun choices, all seemed improved. The multiplayer seemed vastly improved. Many people regard Halo 5, as one of the better multiplayers. At least probably one of the better of the 343 multiplayers, but just in general, of all the Halo titles, one of the better multiplayers. But then they took a big step backwards in most people's opinion in the campaign and the story-wise. So it was just a hard time to be a Halo fan because there's just lots of controversy and division within the Halo community. And so that's kind of the question they start off with. And the first point I wrote down was 343 was very aware of the state of Halo after Halo 5. They wanted to do better. They wanted to do better for the community. They knew they made improvements, but they knew what they had done wasn't enough, right? And I think that's a good takeaway. It's something that's subtle to take away from that because it does seem sometimes like game devs don't care, right? It just seems like they're more worried about making money, or it just seems like whoever, like EA or whatever, they don't care what the fans want. They just want to make money. Microsoft in this case, it just seems like they worry about microtransactions and whatever is able to monetize. That's what they take advantage of. The fans, they don't care. And it just seems like that sometimes. But I think this does a pretty good job opening and starting with like 343 Industries. They were aware of what the community wanted, what they needed, and they wanted to do better. And I think that's a good foot to start off with, right? It kind of lets us know the mistakes they made weren't intentional, right? For the most part. They go over the importance of multiplayer and using it to recapture audiences of old and new audiences. They show like Halo 5 Guardians multiplayer was beloved by a lot, but it did take a step in a direction that was different than a lot of the other Halo titles in multiplayer. It's a lot more competitive, right? And with that, you kind of ostracize the side of the fandom, right? For instance, me, I got into Halo mostly because my dad was in Halo, right? He came back from war, and that was something he brought back with him, is he was able to play Halo with his, fellow soldiers, right? That was something that they would be able to bring back. My dad, if he wanted to hop on Halo, let's say in a year or two, and all of multiplayer is highly competitive and the rate of the game is just very different than what he's used to, it's going to ostracize that side of the fandom majorly, right? And 343 was very aware of this. They said, we do like this new side, this new era of multiplayer with these new fans coming in that like this competitive, this sped up gameplay. But we don't want to get rid of those, the people that started the foundation of the multiplayer, like Halo 3 and Halo 2, right? We don't want to get rid of those that are more used to the slower paced multiplayer, right? And that's good. That's really good. And I think, honestly, Halo Infinite does do that. I do like Halo 5 Guardians multiplayer a lot, But if I gotta say like one of the big differences between Halo 5 and Infinite is, I would say Infinite's like core gameplay is just a little bit slowed down than 5's, and I think that's a good thing. I like both multiplayers enough, but I think 5 is slowed down enough that I think you can still bring in a lot of new players, and I think that's a really good thing. And I think they want to improve on that even more going forward. So those are like some really good hints and clues to start off with. But before we get to the next big, point that I wanted to make that the video talked about, anything on any of that stuff, Afton?
I mean, one thing I really liked is when the developers and past people who were into the game went into like the nostalgic factor about bringing those people back that used to love the game, and they brought some of their personal experiences into this explanation of all this stuff. And a lot of it was just playing sandbox with your friends, playing like however you can play with each other, with people you're hanging out with. LAN parties were a big thing, which obviously don't exist hardly anymore, if at all. But I mean, they wanted to bring that feel back to Halo because they realized that that's a big draw to Halo is the nostalgia. That's not everything, obviously, but I mean, personally, I think that's one of the biggest reasons anyone plays Halo. If you want to play a competitive game, it's got its competitive space, but I feel like there's a lot of other options out there, and I don't think it's the biggest competitive game there is. It's definitely a competitive game, but you want to be competitive. They obviously have a story and a campaign that's a big part of it, but I really think that the biggest drawing factor to Halo is the nostalgia.
Well, nostalgia, but also, like, you can't really play a lot of online multiplayer games today, and it's just like low-key and actually fun, not competitive, right? This isn't the dog on any of the big names, but you look at any of the big battle royales, Fortnite, PUBG, Apex, all really, really fast, and there's almost no space for anything but competitiveness, right? Any of like the smaller local stuff like Call of Duty, where it's like, old multiplayer maps and lobbies, again, very high paced, fast, and it almost feels like no matter what you do in that game, it's gonna be competitive, right? There's some things with like the prop game, I can't remember what it's
Prop Hunt.
There's some like that stuff here and there throughout some of the games out there. There's not much, right? Look how quickly Marvel Rivals was really fun for the community, and how quickly it shifted into a highly competitive game space, right? And Halo still, I think they've done a really good job with the playlist and like the Forge and the community maps. There's still a really big part of it where it's just like community is not meant to be competitive, and you can quickly turn it into competitive, switching up the playlist and all of that. You can see early on where they focused at. Obviously, we know how it launched. They didn't launch like they planned, like we wanted. But where it's at now, I think is probably closer to what they initially planned, and I think it's a pretty good design. And I think it's something that it gets overlooked sometimes. The next big thing, and this is pretty big that they hit on, but they don't really hit on a lot in the video, but Unreal Engine was something that they were looking to decide to switch for Halo Infinite from the Slipspace engine, right? Now, Slipspace engine is like the own internal for 343. That's what they use for all the Halo stuff. But if you're, I'm not a huge guy into like the production of gaming, but if you're into any kind of gaming, you know what Unreal Engine is. It's one of the most accessible gaming engines. It's, probably one of the best on the market. I don't know like what's the high end, what's the low end, but I know if everyone's using it, AAA games, not AAA games, I know there's probably something to it, right? And so Halo was thinking about considering switching to it. Slipspace had worked for Halo 5, it had worked for previous titles, but maybe they get more production out quicker. Unreal might be the switch. So you could see from early on in the production of Halo Infinite, they were thinking about switching. So that's really important to see that, like, whatever reason, and we'll get into why they didn't, they wanted to switch to Unreal. So like when they switched to Unreal just last year, that wasn't like, all right, nothing's working, I guess we're gonna do this. They had always, for multiple years now, had planned on it. So that's something we can see from this. But like I mentioned, they didn't switch to Unreal for Halo Infinite. They stayed with their Slipspace engine, and the reason they said they did that, internal vote, so people on the production team at 343 showed 85% interest in wanting to stay with the Slipspace interest. The thought being it would help streamline production, not having to restart in Unreal, right? Like they didn't have anything in Unreal. They haven't produced anything in Unreal. So at least from Halo 5, they could bring some stuff over. It's a lot easy to bring old assets over in your own engine when you've got 7, 8 iterations in that game already, right? Like you don't have to start from ground zero. And that was kind of the idea. right? Now, it's kind of ironic in hindsight, years later, when the game does get out, they can't even keep up with normal battle passes. They gotta switch to operations, right? They can't get out DLCs like they promised because they cannot produce fast enough on the slip space. They're having production problems on the slip space engine, and that's just crazy that that's how it worked. Now, I don't think that's anyone's problem. I think that's just the way it worked out. The fact that they wanted to stay on slip space because they wanted to produce faster and streamline things faster for the community, but they weren't able to, it just shows like they wanted to do the right thing. It just didn't work out for them, right? And that's unfortunate for us because as fans, as consumers, we got the worst end of it, right? We had to wait after the game came out for a year, 2 years before it really showed signs of growth. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the kind of way it worked. That kind of gave me a little bit of comfort that, like, okay, they didn't stay in slip space out of bliss or ignorance, right? Like, it was just they thought they made the right decision and they didn't. That's honestly what it seems like, right? And again, I'm not a huge game developer nerd or anything like that. I watch things from afar and I kind of take notes, but the way I view it is they wanted to do the right thing and they didn't do it right. They didn't approach it the right way. Not that they had the wrong idea, but Unreal would have been better. It would have been better for them to go to Unreal, take it maybe a year or two extra, push the game out to maybe 2021, which that's when it came out anyways. And then afterwards, they really would have been able to get out DLCs and get out game content like they wanted to. They would have made Infinite into the live service stream that it was meant to be, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing between Unreal and Slipspace is, well, not the biggest thing. It started as Slipspace is better than Unreal because Unreal didn't exist. It was one of the most revolutionary things of their time, and that was kind of the draw to the game. Not the draw as everyone's like, oh, this is the best engine, it's going to be the best game. But the graphics were good and advanced for their age because they made their own engine and their own stuff. And eventually, with other big AAA games, technology outpaced this one game company, Halo. I mean, it was inevitable to happen at some point, and it's not really too much of a surprise, but the idea that anyone that you hire outside into your development team has to learn this because it's the only place you can learn this is a big stain, is a big hardship for Slipspace engine, and switching to Unreal is kind of slows things down if they already had enough of the game made and a lot of this stuff. So it sucks that they had that trouble because, you know, if the second Unreal Engine 5 came out, they switched to it, that would have been the best decision, obviously, but no one knows that in that present time. It's possible that, oh, maybe it'll be good. So, as Sammy said, it wasn't like they were ignorant that Unreal Engine exists. They just kind of thought that was the right decision, but it's still, you know, it sucks.
One of the biggest reasons it didn't help either is, right, when you're bringing an engine from, let's say, 5 to Infinite, you got to work on the engine for the first half of the production of the game, right? That's like a good portion of it, right? And they needed outside help with it. They needed to uplift the engine, and they bring in contractors. And that happens a lot for game production, especially like these big titles like this. They bring in, contract work through Microsoft. But Microsoft had this really stupid idea. I don't know why they still do it to this day. I don't remember the exact time. I think it's like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, something like that. It's not even a full year or whatever it is. It's too short of a time. I think it's like 6 months. I think something like that, 6 or 3 months. And then that contract, they can no longer work on that project anymore, right? So like outside work would come in. I know I'm butchering this. I should have taken better notes. My bad. But the contractor would come in, let's say for 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. Then they're done with that time, with that period of their contract. That's it. They can't work on that project anymore. They're on to a different Microsoft project or a different contract. Well, if you spent the last 6 months just getting to know Slipspace engine because it's an internal thing for 343 Industries, I mean, you can only work on the engine so much, right? And like when the next group of people come in, then they have to kind of come in and relearn the engine, and then they gotta start working on it. But they have to work on the stuff that someone else worked on. Like you can see how very quickly this starts snowballing, and you get big engine problems. It's a mixture of like the engine just being I wouldn't say like so internal, but like it's a 343 engine essentially. So anyone outside of 343, contractors or not, they're not going to be familiar with it. So these contractors are coming in with very limited time. It's just going to really ruin the flow of work, right? So it's a mixture of that and the contract work within Microsoft that I think really bit the Slipspace engine in the butt. Not just because Unreal is so much better or anything like that. Unreal is just so much more universal is probably the biggest thing, is why the Unreal engine would have been more profitable for them to switch to. That's kind of it. They don't really talk too much about the Unreal. The rest that they kind of talk about is like what they want to do with the story and the multiplayer, right? And they kind of talk about multiplayer first. Multiplayer is always meant to launch first as standalone, right? It wasn't a marketing gimmick. It wasn't. But it was meant to be a standalone launch, right? And I think it was supposed to launch in 2019. So way earlier than when we initially got it, like 2020 or 2021, whatever it was, like a year or 2 years later. They wanted seasons, and they wanted the narratives of the seasons. So like Fortnite does the battle pass in each season, and they kind of got a narrative, right? Spies, superheroes, Marvel, right? And they wanted to follow that, obviously, to monetize it, but they also really liked the idea. And this is kind of connecting back to like bringing in fans who really only care about the multiplayer. This is how you kind of get them connected to the story. They wanted these seasons, these narratives for the multiplayer seasons. They wanted them to connect to the overall narrative of the Halo universe, to the story, to the campaign. And you can kind of see that with the few season stories that we've gotten so far, with that, like the Spartan Academy, right? And early on, if you play the Halo Infinite multiplayer, you kind of introduced to the Spartan Academy. It doesn't really mean very much, right? And then like some of the, as the seasons were coming out, some of the shorts and cinematics were connecting to it. Overall, it didn't really mean much in the large scheme. It kind of got pushed to the side. But you can kind of see the idea, like they wanted it to connect. Like they wanted this Spartan Academy to be on Zeta Halo, maybe connected with the, I thought this idea was really cool, connected to the Infinity, right? The Infinity was going to be like this hub for all the Spartans, and that's kind of where the multiplayer side connected. So like, it would have made your customized character from multiplayer felt a lot more connected to the overall story of Halo. And I gotta say, I love that. I love when games do that, right? And it wouldn't replace the main story overall with the Master Chief and all of that. It wasn't gonna replace it. It was just gonna give you something to connect with, right? And I thought that would have been really, really cool. Especially if they would have, brought in some like Warzone modes, PvP versus PvE, right? Like that would have really, really worked. It just would have felt really, really cool. You can see that they kind of tried it. It got pushed to the side. It wasn't really fully fledged out. But the little things that we got with the little story we got was already cool enough. You know what I mean? I would have liked to see that fledged out more. I think that was a really good idea by 343. Just the idea of like connecting the multiplayer. It's not like really groundbreaking, but like I think it would have worked for Halo, right? Something that I liked from the, the 343 era is like, they make the UNSC, the Infinity, the Marines, they make it feel a lot more incorporated. The first 3 games are all kind of based on just the Master Chief pretty much alone, right? And I like that they're kind of bringing in like the overall story with like more humans, Marines, Spartans. And I think you could really tie that in with like making you feel in character with your own Spartan from the multiplayer. Like that's a brilliant idea. It's obviously a big narrative change from classic Halo, but it's something I think that could have worked for a different style. Speaking of multiplayer, they wanted to try something new. And at least from the video, maybe we'll get some screenshots or even some of the video in here to show it, they really wanted to introduce classes in multiplayer. And now I'm not talking like Halo 4 or Reach, where like you have a gun class. I'm talking more like Battlefront or Battlefield, right? Where you have designated roles almost, right? Not like a Overwatch or Rivals where like you need a healer in every team, but more like your squad has set rules and these rules can affect you positively for this, right? Like if you're not that great of a, Halo multiplayer player, you can still feel immersed and have fun with it if you can get a lot of revives or a lot of healing, right? Like I know sometimes for me when I play Battlefield, I'll just play a medic and I'll just go around reviving everybody, and that's fun enough for me, honestly. I'll go a game and I'll get like 50 revives. And I'm like, that was really fun. Even though I got 3 kills and I died 15 times, I had fun reviving my team a bunch. And I affected our team overall, helping us keep us alive. Something like that. And Battlefront, it doesn't matter as much, right? You just have heavies. Heavies just put down a lot of damage, but they have anti-vehicle weapons. Maybe that's what it would have been like, but in general, it would have been something like that where you had classes. And I also would have liked that. I think the fans would have been split on this no matter what, because it's not classic Halo. But I think that would have been a really cool idea, just to change it. I'm all about innovation, trying new things. If they did it for this game, that doesn't mean that's how it was always going to stay. You know what I mean? I would have liked to see it tried. And like I said, at least from the video, it looked like they put a lot of work and concept into this idea. Maybe that's why a lot of production was halted, because they kind of had to turn everything around last second. Okay, this isn't going to work. Or the rest of higher ups don't like this, or I don't know. But it does seem like they put a lot of thought process in this. So maybe that's something we'll see return in the future.
Yeah, one thing that, when they said when they kind of implied bring your own character for multiplayer and campaign and tie that all in, as Sammy explained it, make it more personal, that really reminded me of Reach, where you have your own character, you customize, you put it in there, but take it to the next level. Because in Reach, in the cutscenes, you have your own custom character, at least in the MCC version. I'm not sure about the original, but you have your own custom character put into the cutscenes, and that's really cool to see. You put a goofy looking Spartan, but it actually fits, because that's the plot. There is a ton of Spartans, and they do that. And I think that immediately when they started talking about these different classes and different aspects of that, I immediately thought of the books. Kelly in the books, the Spartan Kelly, is way faster than everyone and is a great sniper. That's kind of something that actually already applies into lore. It's not like all these Spartans are amazing at everything. Actually, John Halo, Master Chief, is the only one that's really... his thing is he's just good at everything. He's not excellent at any one particular thing, but he's good at everything. So that also fits in the plot. You could have, there's a million ideas you could throw out there, and part of this video that we'll have linked down in the description is kind of all the different ideas they had. And one of them is you could, buy certain characters that are battle pass earn these certain characters, or you can make your own custom ones. There's a million different ways you can make this, and it'd be fun and cool. And the Spartan Academy program was also cool. It makes the campaign seem really immersed. I don't know if there is any game like this yet, that has the campaign actually pushing forward, the multiplayer actually pushing forward the campaign plot. Obviously there's a lot of games that have multiplayer plot kind of there, and it does something but doesn't really affect it. But it'd be really cool for them to release a game, have multiplayer only, have that multiplayer have a plot lead up into the campaign, a campaign plot, and then a few months later more multiplayer advancing the plot a little bit more. Talk about live service. Fortnite is just a multiplayer plot. That's how it works, that's how it is. But this would be really cool to have them both intertwined, and hey, you should play this, and the seasons really affect it. So the people that are playing are the only ones really getting the experience of the full plot. Of course, you can reminisce, watch videos, whatever you want, but it'd be cool to be, wow, this month is this mission that you're doing, this style. I don't know. That was the coolest idea, and completely out of the blue, not something I'd expect from a Halo game in general.
Something that goes to my mind is Halo 5 Guardians. I liked the squad, Osiris team and Blue team. I like that. Right? That's been in the Halo lore since the first books. You know what I mean? You've always kind of had your Spartan squad. So I like that they finally had it in a game. But they didn't really feel like they did anything. They just felt like AI that was there. I think something that on top of giving the team more character building, making them more interesting, something that also could have really drove interest for the squad is having different roles within the squad in the campaign. You know what I mean? One's more of a designated healer and can help. One's more designated gun gear and has extra ammo and can give you weapons. Something like that. And again, the multiplayer into campaign is a really cool concept that really could have helped. After you beat the campaign, you have this overall sense of we're taking back the ring, and they kind of say that at the end of the campaign. And then you roll into multiplayer, and then the next big update's Warzone. And so you can still do PvE with your friends that affects the campaign, but there's also other enemy players. Like, there's something that really could have been cool about that. And I think that's something that they really should bring in, because something that is very obvious that Bungie stands out against 343 is Bungie were innovators. They wanted to bring something new every time they created a story and a game. They didn't just want to bring back what they had done. They didn't want to just live off nostalgia, or they want to copy the competition. They wanted to create something new, right? Whether it was beloved or not, they wanted to do that. And it seems like 343, at least with the first two iterations, they weren't doing that. And then they realized, okay, we got to go back to that. We got to be back to innovating, creating new ideas and concepts. And it seems like they had such good ideas that, like, maybe not every fan would have agreed on, but like, I think overall would have just been so much better than just what we got dead on arrival, essentially, right? Like, the game was dead because of the engine, unfortunately. It just sucks, you know, it really does. Customization was going to be huge for this game, and it is. I think Infinite is probably one of the most customizable games. Afton mentioned Reach. Reach is probably one of the first games that had, like, really, really big customization. But Infinite was going to do that more, and it already has. They were going to do a little bit more than they did, like being able to buy colors. That's a monetization thing for Microsoft. That wasn't really what they planned on. You can see early on they were going to let you just color your Spartans, which is cool. You know, they changed from red versus blue to like red hues versus blue hues, because they wanted you to be able to see all the customization. Again, feel in character with your skin. And that's what we got in the end. And I gotta say, I absolutely love that. That's really, really, really cool. Having all these different Spartan armors. I know a lot of people just want one Spartan armor. I don't mind having a couple. I do think we have too many. I think we have like 8 or something. I think 3 or 4 would have been just fine. Because you can't have all of them be the same. Because there's some variation. Like, some are just bulkier. Some have just different styles. But overall, I think it's really cool, the customization that we got with it. And you can see that was important to them because, again, they wanted you to feel immersed. Like, they knew the campaign was important to them, and you could tell, but they really wanted the multiplayer to, like, bring in the other side. Because the multiplayer was almost starting to, like, Halo 4, people liked the campaign for the most part, but didn't love the multiplayer, didn't like the gameplay. And then Halo 5 was the exact opposite. It's like, okay, well, we can't keep trend setting where we have half the fans like the multiplayer and the other half hate the, you know, like, you can't have that. You want to be kind of converge and everyone likes everything. And I think they had a lot of plans for that to actually work. The campaign, what we got was just so much more cut concept than what we were supposed to have, right? The overall idea of what we got is essentially what they had planned, but it was going to be fleshed out so much better, right? They were going to have a lot more biomes. They were going to have like 5 to 7 different biomes. And like the main biome, like the Northwest, you know, Seattle kind of style, was like, that's where the main campaign was going to take place. That makes sense. But then they were going to have like all these different biomes, snowy biomes, desert biomes, right? All these different biomes. And they were going to have like these areas, like, kind of tell more stories, right? Like, they wanted more side missions because we didn't really get side missions, right? We got like side objectives, but not side missions that told a story, that told a plot, and had development with them. We didn't get that. I mean, we got some like audibles, but like that's not, those aren't side missions. That's just like extra stuff. So they really wanted to tell the stories, like with Cortana. That was going to be fleshed out way more than it was. It wasn't just going to be kind of pieced together on the side on part of the campaign. It was going to have like its own mission line, like own side missions, and like you didn't have to go complete that to know what was happening, but like it was going to make it intriguing enough, and it's going to be part of this biome. Like, you wanted to go over there and do this thing. You could tell they really wanted to integrate the biomes and like the overall open world narrative to really tell the story as well. You know, there's obviously a lot more from this that we're not sharing, mostly because I just don't want to get copyrighted or get this video taken down. But it just seems like they had so many great plans and ideas. I don't know, man. I gotta see what they can do in Unreal, obviously, but it's really unfortunate because it seemed like they had the right path ahead. They really, really did. And because of game issues, because of, you know, pandemic, because of just the way things rolled out, because of Microsoft, unfortunately, and the way that Microsoft plays, it didn't come out the way it should have, right? And you can kind of tell the campaign, it's bland. Like, it's okay, but it's bland. You can tell there's a lot of missing from it. Story, map, guns, game, characters, a lot of cut, right? A lot cut. And it's very obvious. Multiplayer, when it came out, a lot cut. They didn't have Forge. They didn't have basic game modes, right? They didn't have, like, they had like 3 playlists. You can tell now, what they have now is probably more close to what they had planned, but probably even more than what we have now is what they had planned. It's unfortunate. It really is. This video made me sad because it's just like, this is what we're going to have to stick with, at least for the next couple of years still, because I doubt we're getting a Halo 7 anytime soon. It's going to be at least a year or 2 years before that, if not more. And it's unfortunate because it seemed like Halo Infinite, you know, had everything right, everything planned. You know, obviously it wasn't going to be perfect. It wasn't going to be everyone's cup of tea. But, like, it just seemed like they were really trying. And that's all you can really, you can only commend them for that. Like, they weren't giving up. The game that we got, that was not what they wanted. You know, the game that we got, keeping in mind the delays, the cut content, the pandemic, the huge shift with leadership internally, it's pretty obvious that this game could have been way worse on arrival, right? But that's just not good enough, right? Someone made a good quote. I don't know exactly who made it. I forget. I think it's Frogicist. I don't remember. He does speedrunning stuff. Anyways, the biggest difference between 343 and Bungie, and I tested this truly, is the Bungie games, great. 343 are good, but they're not great. They have some great stuff in them, but their, you know, overall tone is just good. Like, they're good, but they're not good enough to keep up. Infinite was good, but it could have been so much better. And it's unfortunately, it's really no one person's fault. That's probably the worst part about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that just added stress to the developers. Can you imagine having multiple management styles being put into your ear? Like, I mean, you have one guy telling you what to do, and then 3 months later, he's gone. You got someone else in here telling you what to do, and then different contractors too, also helping you. I mean, you get a different set of hands every few months. It's amazing that we got a quality working game that's pretty darn good. It took a long time, and there was a lot of updates that had to happen, and it didn't come out when we expected, but it did turn out pretty good. And I mean, there are so many things that they could have put in here, that they wanted to put in here, that they just sadly didn't make it in. I mean, the Warzone mode from Halo 5 would have worked beautifully with the idea of making the multiplayer a plot, where you got a whole bunch of random Prometheans here, Covenant here, and then you got one team versus another team. And they didn't have a plot in Halo 5, they just had everyone wants to capture this objective for some reason. But it could have fit really well into it, and there was just a ton planned for Halo Infinite. I mean, I think if they made the choice to go to Unreal, and then a million other bad things that didn't happen, we would have had an amazing product, and maybe it would have been delayed, but delayed amazing products are better than rushed half-done projects. I mean, I'd rather it a year, 2-year delay and done and great than a year early and half done.
Yeah, you know, we'll see. The 343 is, for all intents and purposes, Halo Industries, right? It's not a complete change up, but it is. A lot of the people that were there for the beginning of Halo Infinite, almost none of them are here for Halo Studios, right? So it's a pretty big change up. And something they keep on saying is, like, the way we made games is not the way we make games now, right? Obviously, one of them being is different gaming engine, right? Unreal Engine's now the main engine that they're going to run things on. But, like, I also like to believe, like, I think they're going to take their time, you know what I mean? Like, something that a lot of Halo games have been marred with is getting rushed out. Like, very few games have come out when they anticipated the way they wanted. You know what I mean? All of them have been delayed, lots of cut content. I mean, like, even the great Bungie games, a lot of them have cut content. So, like, huge cut content, because, like, they got rushed out. And, you know, maybe that's something they're going to change, or maybe they're just going to have smaller ambitions. I don't know. But this showed me, like, they're trying, and it's not these terrible overlords of EA or Microsoft, or, you know, these business suits that are ruining our games. That's not what it is. It's just sometimes the decisions they made just didn't work out that they should have. You know what I mean? And it's really no one's fault. You know, like in hindsight's 2020. Yeah, it makes sense with the way Microsoft contracts are set up and the way this engine is working. It's not going to work out well, right? But like that, they didn't know that, they didn't believe that, they didn't see that, and it sucks because now we know like there's so much more we could have gotten out of it. I 100% recommend watching it. It's about a 21 minute video. Great video. Yeah, you know what I mean. I recommend watching it. There's plenty of stuff we're missing. I don't want to, go over everything with a fine comb, but in general, that's about the gist of it. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments. If there's anything major that we're missing that we should cover, if there's anything that we covered that was wrong, because this is kind of coming off of like some notes, so I might have miswrote something or misheard something. But that's about it. Yeah, let us know what you guys think about all this down in the comments. Go and watch it. Let us know what you guys think about after you watched it. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. If you guys are listening on podcast, don't forget to hit that follow and download, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace.
We do it together.